To begin with, Ian, I do want to touch on the Moises Caicedo stuff, just from sort of a reflective perspective, I guess, if you like, because it is very much done now. It is Chelsea bound. What have you made of the past few days and sort of the saga that unfolded? And I suppose, what have you made of Liverpool's decision to suddenly go for him and suddenly go gung-ho and try and make the deal happen? And then indeed, sort of not budging on their offer being on the table. What have you made of what's unfolded?
Well, I mean, there's a few ways you can look at it. I mean, one, everyone who thinks that Liverpool aren't making any statements for the signings is that they've just bid £110 million for one player. You know, now the criticism there is why hasn't it come? I do think there's a certain element of there's no way Liverpool would have bid 110 million if they hadn't got any encouragement from the players' representatives or someone along those lines. And I know for a fact that last year you'd have been quite happy to join Liverpool. Now, from his point of view, Chelsea have wanted him all summer. Yet at no point did they actually want to pay the actual worth of the player until Liverpool did, or said he paid even probably above his worth. So, and then it took Chelsea 3 days almost, or 3 full days to actually come up with the deal to get it done. So, there's going to be questions over financial fair play. I mean, if Chelsea end up buying all the players they want to buy this summer, they'll have spent about £1 billion in the last three transfer windows, and only gotten about 300 to 350 million. So I'd love to know how they're doing that. But you can't give every player a 15-year contract or whatever it is that they're doing. But ultimately, that doesn't really make any difference to Liverpool. The issue there is, have they looked stupid going in for this player? Well, the answer is no. I don't think they've been looked stupid at all. And then there was this talk of they need to, they're getting embarrassed. They need to withdraw their bid. Why on earth would they do that? Why on earth would they do that? And then one of their rivals, Chelsea, just let them have the player for £35 million less than, or whatever it was, could have been £15 million in the end, wouldn't it? Because they bid 100 million. So there was never any chance of that happening. The complication, of course, is that Chelsea have now gone in for Lavia, who a player that Liverpool really like. But Liverpool, similar to Manchester City, because you saw this happen with Declan Rice, Man City, there's been one or two other players where they go, we really like this player, we value him at this, and we're willing to go up to that. And then they just go, great, well, we're not going above that. So Liverpool, in some ways, stuck to the guns over that. But, now, what time is it? 11:27 on Monday that we're recording this. That now there's some suggestion that Liverpool have made a £60 million, but we've not been told that, certainly at the moment. And as far as we're aware, Liverpool think he's off to Chelsea anyway. So, Liverpool have been left in a situation now where there's been a position that they've had to fill reactively, because they didn't, as we've mentioned before on this podcast, they didn't really know that they were going to end up selling Henderson and Fabinho. And then if Basetic would have been fit, none of this would be happening, because he would have just started the season. Liverpool would have had a bit more time to kind of think about it, and nobody would be quite as concerned. But that is, he is being unfit. He's been unfit for 5 months nearly. So they knew this was happening. So it is a tricky one for Liverpool. I mean, they've missed out on a player that they wouldn't have minded having, but had only just got him for. They're probably going to now miss out on a player that they would have actually really wanted, but had a value for him and didn't really want to go over it. Whereas Chelsea can seemingly do whatever they want when it comes to signing players. But I think what you've also got to be careful is that it is a long-term thing. Obviously now you're slightly worried because Liverpool don't have this number 6 at present. I mean, they're playing Bournemouth at home in the next game. You'd like to think there's one game where you don't possibly need one. It's that. They can get by in that. But then after that, it's Newcastle. After that, it's Aston Villa. So these are games. I know Villa got beat 5-1 at Newcastle, but I'm expecting them to do a bit better over the course of the season. So the way they ended last season. They're going to be 2 difficult games, and you're going to need a player like that. And Liverpool can't afford to fall too far behind at the start of the season, because we saw what happened last year. So that's the complication. But there are an awful lot of defensive midfielders out there. There aren't just these 2 players. There's loads of them, absolutely loads of them. And while Liverpool do have this thing whereby they quite like signing the right player, and they make a big deal of, we got this player, it's great, it's right, he's the right one at the right price. They're just going to probably not do that now, because they can't. Because all the right players that they wanted have gone. All the right players at the right prices, such as Caicedo, he's gone. They didn't want to come anyway, by the looks of it. And so you're left with Liverpool just have to do something. And there's going to be a premium. There is an argument that Liverpool's shown their hand about how much money they've got, because they've bid 110 million, 111 million for Caicedo. But what I would say on that is I think that was one where they probably were going to be also investing a bit more of the future, transfer window. My guess would be that. My guess, not a lot, but like a little bit. I'd imagine they probably got a bit like they've gone, right, we can sign a defensive midfielder with this, and people are going to mention it. They're going to sign it. We want to sign a centre back like that because they've been looking at a centre back all summer. Klopp said that back in May. He was asked directly at his last press conference before the Southampton game. So none of that's new. The only problem for Liverpool is that now when they go to other teams and go, well, we want to sign your player, they go, oh, we know how much money you've got. But the other thing on top of that is that do these clubs not think that all these big teams have got all this money anyway?
Yeah.
I just gave you the Man City example. They know Man City have got loads of money. They know Chelsea, but they know they're not absolutely soft. They're not just going to pay anything for any of these players because then some of these players will want to go to these clubs. Like Caicedo, and Brighton had that that deadline, which was obviously imaginary for bids, and they know that these players want to go eventually, and they'll go at a certain price. So Brighton did really well out of that deal. Chelsea obviously done really well. I mean, if it's funny, isn't it? Is that imagine if like 5 years down the line, somebody claims that Liverpool would just do Brighton a favour for McAllister because they got McAllister on a cheap, and so they just got an extra 35 million out of Chelsea for Brighton, which I don't think is true at all. But let's be honest, in this crazy transfer window world that we have, anything could be possible. But going back to the initial point, Liverpool. Let's put it this way: on Thursday afternoon, nobody knew or really considered that Liverpool were going for Caicedo. So that was actually done and dusted really, really quickly.
Yeah.
It was like, they've had a bid accepted, and now we've gone somewhere else. So that was kind of done. Lavia, as I say, a bit more concerning because they put in the effort, and it looks like they're probably going to get, gazumped or certainly miss out on the player. But they'll have the list. But now time's pressing because what is it? Less than 3 weeks until the transfer window shuts, and I think Liverpool now know from having seen that game against Chelsea that they can't get by with the players that they've got at the moment in that position because it's not fair on some of the other ones because McAllister wants to be playing a bit further advanced, which is where he should be. Szoboszlai wants to be playing with somebody more defensive behind. The defence wants to be playing with somebody shielding them. It knocks on knock-on effect all the way through the team. So, yeah, I think Liverpool will sign somebody, but the reality is we don't actually know which one it's going to be yet.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I want to come on to some of the possible options. I read your report this morning in the Echo about these and sort of who it could be, who we could turn to. And they're all names that we're familiar with. They've all been linked at various points down the line this summer. And it was an interesting point you made in terms of Caicedo's preference being Chelsea and obviously living in London being a significant factor. It's something we've seen before. And just on the point you made there, I don't think, as you say, top six clubs or even big Premier League clubs can't really cry poverty in this day and age when it comes to transfers because it just won't wash at all. And it's interesting, actually. I spoke to Neil recently about the McAllister-Caicedo sort of deal and the fact we did get McAllister for so cheap, in inverted commas. Maybe Brighton would look to tag some on the Caicedo deal. And maybe we've done him a little bit of a favour, like you say, in that. Just on the Lavia stuff there, Ian, you mentioned, obviously, in the report, you said that Liverpool were likely to return for Lavia. You think maybe now, well, the word is Liverpool are kind of giving up on that one potentially a little bit as things stand anyway?
Well, that's our understanding, but obviously things can change pretty quickly. Yeah. But they now know that they can't waste any time. So if there's a player who doesn't want to, another player doesn't want to come, what's the point in hanging around? Because they can go off and get somebody else. Because, Chelsea are offering these players an awful lot of money. I mean, the interesting thing for me, and again, not getting to Lavia's head, but he's joining a team that's just literally spent 150 million pounds on his position. So that's up to him, and they're not going to know Europe this season, so he's not going to be playing many games. But he's only 19, so and he's already played for Man City, so perhaps he's just going to do the rounds. He could be one of these players that ends up playing in all of the big teams at some point. So yeah, Liverpool, those names that were linked. They'll have looked at them all. But now that the season started, it becomes a slightly more different dynamic, doesn't it? Because then these teams have gone, well, actually, we've done our preparations. We're underway. You want to take one of our players who we've now planned for having the rest, certainly up to January, having. And so we've got to try and go and replace them. So it will be interesting to see what transpires because big ask for George Schmacker, isn't it? He's come in and, I'm not sure how much he had to do with the Szoboszlai deal. in the sense that it was a release clause. So whoever would have paid it anyway. So that was done very quickly. But since then, Liverpool got really good money for Fabinho and Jordan Henderson. But at what point should they have just said, one of you has got to stay because we're not going to sign anybody else? Klopp said when we were in Singapore, he said that, we'll definitely have somebody in for the start of the season. So somebody must have said that to him for him to be that confident. And it just hasn't worked out. So there are still, as I say, just under 3 weeks to go. Yeah. Liverpool are going to sign somebody because they have to.
Yeah.
But it's now a question possibly of how many do they sign? Do they sign 2 midfielders? Do they sign a midfielder and a centre-back? I mean, it's they've obviously got a bit of money regardless of when they're going to spend it.
Mm-hmm.
But, and also the other thing as well is that it's the old thing that they base the transfer windows around the summer. Last summer's you included Diaz. This summer you kind of include Gakpo. So, that's just the way that it works, unfortunately. I know that normally Liverpool, you look at it and go, people don't really sign players in January, but Liverpool have signed Van Dijk, Gakpo, Diaz, and for argument's sake, Minamino still played a really big part in the quadruple season as well when they were going for the quadruple. So, these are players who've done their bit, came in January, and you can't just say, well, they don't count, because they obviously do.
Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that section of my conversation with the brilliant Ian Doyle. Yeah, if you want to watch or hear the rest of that show in full, head to redmenplus.com, sign up as a captain or a legend, and you'll get that, plus all the other amazing content that we do day in, day out here at Redmen TV.